Hello, thank you so much for joining me today for our live illustration workshop. So this workshop is a very gentle introduction to the art of live illustration, which a lot of live illustrators do weddings. Some of us do events. So we all have different specialties or things that we do more often. I personally have mostly been doing weddings, and I've been doing this for about 2.5 years. I'm moving into doing other things with my art now, and my art is taking me in different directions. But I would love to share the skills that I have acquired and developed over these few years. So I thought we'd start by doing working on a picture that I've already sort of started. This is a wedding that I attended in October, and so we're going to be drawing from the reference photo. We're going to be drawing on this paper here. This is a pre-printed piece that I made for the couple. They requested the details that they wanted to be pre-printed onto the paper, so I did that for them, and I used these on the night. And so I'm continuing to use that paper for the remainder of the photos that I'm going to, once I've finished drawing them, I'll send them to them. So before we get started, we'll just have a quick look at equipment. So I use these pens for my live illustrations. They're called Uni Pin, and the reason that I use them is because I'll list this in the description as well. But the reason that I use these pens is because they are waterproof, so I'm able to draw and then paint almost directly after. I usually give it at least 30 seconds to a minute just to make sure that I like having it dry, because sometimes if you do straight away, it does smudge a little bit. So give it a little minute to dry. That does work a lot better. So how this is going to work is we're going to draw the picture initially. We're going to sketch it out with the pen. For practice, you can use a pencil, and we can do it together. And then after we've drawn it, then I'm going to show you a little bit about color mixing. I use watercolors. Most live illustrators do use watercolors because it's a little bit quicker to dry, and also you're able to cover large bits of surface area. It's just a little bit less tricky in that sense than oils or a different medium. So that's why most of us use watercolor. So let's get started. So this is a picture with 3 people in it, which is something that you will probably have a lot of if you are going to illustrate at weddings or events. You'll most likely have more than one person. So when I have more than one person, I like to start with the middle person where possible. So I personally usually start with the chin of my subject. That makes it a little bit, personally I find it a little bit easier to keep track of where everything is. So I start with the chin. So we'll start with the chin of the bride. So you're welcome to follow along with me. If you have a pencil, that's probably the easiest to start with in case you need to erase anything, and then you can graduate to using pens. So let's start this together, and I will give you pointers along the way, but we'll go slowly, and let me know if you want me to slow down at all. So let's start with the chin. So we just need to make sure paying attention to the slope of her chin. So just making sure that those little details are what makes it look accurate. So she's a little bit side on, so we're just making sure to include that rotation, that slight angle of her chin. And then I usually start doing the hairline. So got her hair, and we can come back to that towards the end to make sure that it's looks exactly how we'd like it to look. Then we've got the neck, and we'll start with the shoulders. And then what I usually do is, as I'm completing this part of the middle subject, I will make sure that I've got enough space for the subjects on the side. So now we're going to start working on the bride's dad, and just kind of keeping an eye on, okay, how far up is his shoulder, because that's how you make sure that the height is accurate. So you can see that his shoulder goes to, I'll just quickly find, let's get a little piece of paper so that we can just one moment, I'll just get a piece of paper and we can have a look. So you can see here that his shoulder is in line with the bottom of her ear. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but we just kind of keep that in mind. So what we might do is we might just finish with her ear here. And that'll give us really good direction for the rest of the piece. So that's her ear there, and then so we make sure that his shoulder is in line with the bottom of her ear there. And then there's a slight slope to his shoulder. So as you're drawing, you're just being very aware of everything that you can see. It's important to draw what you see, not what you think you see, because that's what makes it more accurate. So there's a slope of his cheek there, and then we'll do the rest of his cheek, and then we're just making sure that we're in line, so the top of her head aligns with the bottom of his forehead approximately. So because it's live illustration, it doesn't need to be perfect, because you're going fast, you've got a lot of people that you're drawing, but you're just kind of making micro adjustments as you draw. And then I usually do the hair at the same time, and then we're going to do his collar. You can see that his collar comes down a little bit from that bit of his shoulder. So his shoulder is coming out from the sort of the bottom of his chin, around the bottom of his chin. So we just have to go a little bit below that to start his collar. Like I said, though, it doesn't need to be perfect. You just try to get as close as possible, where possible, because that's what makes it look a lot more accurate. There's his ear. Finish the rest of his collar. There we go. So I'm going to go back to the other side and make sure that there's enough space for the bride's mother as well. So you've got the bride's shoulder. So I'm just sort of doing the top of everybody so that we are making sure that everybody is in the right spot and has enough space. So her shoulder, we have a quick look and make sure we know where we're up to. So her shoulder is a little bit below the bride's shoulder, so that's, we can tell that she's a little bit shorter than her, so that's how we make sure that we draw that accurately. So her shoulder's going in there, and then her hair's on her shoulder as well. So we'll start her hair there. And then underneath her hair, we've got her collar. So there you can see that we've got her shoulder and her collar. So now we know that we need about this much space for her, and so she'll fit in. And the more that you do this, the more that you practice, you'll be able to sort of gauge when you start around how big your subjects should be to keep everybody at least, 2/3 of them, or at least a third of them in the drawing. Over time, you may, for example, you may have more people in a photo and you would draw everybody a little bit smaller. So that's her collar there. So live illustration is also about being quite quick, and speed definitely comes from practice. We work on the fundamentals first, and then once we've got hang of the fundamentals, that's when we work on our speed. And it's important with live illustration to make sure that you're drawing everybody in as flattering a way as possible, because while we are drawing what we see, we also want to make sure that the guests are happy with the end product as well, and they feel that they feel flattered by it. So we just want to really enhance like those features, like the hair, making it look really pretty, things like that. Really capturing like the curves of their hair, especially when they've gotten dressed that day, they would have made sure to have their hair curled and things like that. So you really want to accentuate that and capture that it's all part of how they feel on that day, and the excitement that comes with getting ready for an event and everything. So you want to make sure you make that nice and obvious. So she's got some beautiful waves in her hair, so we're really keeping that nice and highlighted. So there we go. We've got her hair there, neck there, and then her hair goes like that, and then her chin comes out a little bit more. We've got this part of her shoulder comes out a little bit more. And now we're going to be focusing on drawing the rest of the picture, because now we've got everybody in the picture. So now we can focus on finishing the drawing. So she's got her sleeve has some feathers. Just do like that, and then go down. And then we can see that she's sort of leaning into her daughter. So we've got it like this. going to draw the wedding dress. So with clothes especially, we just draw it in stages. So we've started with the middle of her dress, and then the sleeves, and then we go downwards. So we're trying to draw the shapes. So we've got her arm there, and because we can't see her whole arm, we'll start with the inside of her arm. We're going to draw this bit, which is what we can see, and then we will draw this part of her of the bride's father's suit, because we can see that that is sort of slightly in front of her arm because he's standing quite close to her. So we can do that, and that really helps with the accuracy. So like that. And then we've got, so we can see that her arm is coming into a bit of a bend. And then we've got his tie, which we'll do now. My computer has just informed me that it's about to run out of battery, so I'll just quickly pop the charger in. 1 second, sorry. Okay, so now we're going to do the tie. And the tie is not straight down, it's on it has a slight curve to it. It's because of the angle that he's standing. And then we've got the rest of his suit. And so the reason that I keep going back and forth between the subjects is because I'm trying to make sure that everything is in the right spot. Going back and forth really helps you to make micro adjustments and make sure that you're on the right track in terms of where everything is in relation to everything else. So we've got her hand there. We can only sort of see the top of her hand. The way that I do hands as well is I tend to do a bit of a scaffold first. So I've just drawn a little sort of rectangle for the palm of her hand. And then from there, I'm adding her fingers. And then we've got her flowers that are hanging from her hand. And we can see that they're overlapping her hand as well. And now we'll concentrate on drawing some of the flowers. We've got a big leaf here, so you want to draw the bigger pieces first because it's what makes it look accurate. And you'll develop your own style of drawing certain things like flowers, it's important to remember that it is a sketch, so it doesn't need to be super detailed, just enough that you can tell what it is really. We've got a bow here, just keeping in mind, it's a sketch. So we just put detail here and there, but we don't need too much detail. Then we've got her dress, which kind of goes out to where her mum is standing as well. So like that. Then we've got the rest of her dad's suit. And he's got a little bonbonniere, I think they're called bonbonnieres, on his suit, which matches the flowers of the bouquet that she's holding. And then we'll just complete the side of his hand there. Once again, we're just drawing the shape of it first. So you can see there that I've drawn the shape. So we've done this part as sort of like an irregular rectangle, and then also a regular rectangle that way as well. And then we can go in and draw the details of his fingers. And then we've got his pant leg, and we've got a little bit more space on this side to go all the way down with that. And then we've also got the bottom of the mum's dress going all the way down. And then I will just finish the bride's hair now. And like I was saying before, those sorts of details are what makes it really beautiful, making sure that you're really capturing the curls and those really beautiful details that make that person look like that person, and also just really captures the effort that they went into to get dressed and everything like that. And those are all part of the memory of that day for them. So there we go. We have the sketch here. So we're going to come back to this in terms of painting it, but at the moment I'm going to draw. So what I tend to do when I'm at weddings, especially, is I batch create. So I'll maybe draw 3 or 4. I'll sketch 3 or 4 at a time, and then I'll come back and paint the 3 or 4, and that just keeps me from switching between my palette and my pen and all the different materials. It keeps me from switching so much, which can eat up valuable time, especially when you're trying to go quickly. So we're going to find another picture of from the same event, and then we're going to draw them as well. So I'm just going to quickly bring it up, just one moment. All right, here we go. So we've got another picture here. Just making sure I haven't done this one already. No, I haven't. Okay, here we go. So put this one aside, and then we've got a fresh piece of paper here, which is pre-printed as well. So now we're going to draw these two bridesmaids. So once again, just make sure that we can see as much as possible of that picture. So once again, so firstly, before we get started with the actual sketch itself, we'd like to just have a quick look at the picture of our reference photo and just sort of checking where everything is. So the first thing we notice is that they have different heights. Their chins are the lady on the left, her chin is slightly below the ladies on the right. So these are the indicators of height, and we can make sure to keep those try and keep those accurate when we're drawing. Their shoulders are around the same level, but hers is slightly on an angle because she's leaning in. And also the ground is uneven. So these are all little things that we just need to keep in mind before we start drawing. And they've got drinks in their hands as well, so we just need to pay attention to that. So the first thing that we're going to do, like I did with the first painting, the first picture, is we're going to draw their chins. So like I was mentioning before, their chins are slightly different at different levels. So we're going to start. I usually like to start with the shortest person in the picture, because that way, you know, if you start up here with the shortest person and you've drawn their face, then you go to draw the taller person, it's probably going to run into the writing, especially if you've got a pre-printed paper. So I like to start with the shortest person to ensure that I have enough space for the taller person as well. If it's two people, it's the same principle if you have more people in the picture as well. So we'll start with the bridesmaid on the left. I might just move this up a little bit so we can see a bit more. Okay. It's so bright at the moment. I'm not really sure why it's so bright. I'm sorry about that. I'm going to see if I can adjust my light a little bit. I don't know if I've made that worse. I think I've made it worse. Okay, never mind. I'll just turn the brightness down on this, and that should help. A little bit more. There you go. Much better. So let's start with the chin. The chin on the lady on the left. My left. So it's at a slight angle. Just keeping that in mind, it's at a slight angle. then we've got her ear, got her earring as well. So we've got those first details. Then we're going to do the curl of her hair there. Okay, so we've got that first part. Then we're going to do the other side of her hair, and it's falling down that way. And then the best way to make sure that the second subject is in the right spot is we're looking at whatever is touching on their body. So their shoulders are touching, so we're going to draw her shoulder, and then we're going to draw her shoulder, and that's how we make sure that they are in the correct place in relation to each other. So her shoulders got a slope. We've got the first part of her dress, and then we're going to, that part of her dress is also on a slight angle. And then we've got her shoulder there, and now we're going to do the second subject's shoulder. So you can see here that the second subject's shoulder is higher, and it comes about the bottom. It comes in about the bottom of the lady on the left, her neck. So just keep that in mind as we're drawing. So we're just checking that it's about the bottom of her neck. Her shoulder comes up to. And then starts her neck. And then her chin is slightly higher than her chin. And then we're doing that side of the face. And we're doing that curl, the front curl. Okay. Now here is where we're going to make sure that the drinks are in relatively close spot to where they are in the picture. We're going to do their arms now. So once again, we're going to do a scaffold of her hand, and you can see here that because her hand is, she's angling it in such a way that it's not flat, this part of her palm is smaller or shorter than it would be if it was stretched out. So we're just making sure that we keep that in mind when we're drawing the little irregular rectangle. And once again, we're doing a scaffold of the hand like that. And then we draw the actual cup of the glass, just keeping in mind how it sits in her hand. There we go. And then it comes out the bottom like that. Okay. And then we've got her pinky. And because it's live illustration, as I mentioned, it doesn't need to be perfect. You just kind of get it close enough, close enough that you can sort of understand what's going on in the photo, and it looks, it has a decent likeness in terms of the way that your subjects are standing, because it's a very much maintaining and being aware of having a balance between speed and accuracy. So you know, you go as fast as you can without making it completely inaccurate, but you also do as much accuracy as you can without completely slowing down. So it's just balancing those two things, because you will have weddings where you have a lot of people. So you've just got to sort of keep that in mind. Once again, we are making sure that we're drawing that irregular rectangle short and small because of the angle of her hand. She's got her middle finger coming up that way, bottom finger coming up that way, and the bottom one coming up that way, and then the top coming all the way back. And then we draw the cup. Then draw the back of her dress. And when you're at a wedding as well, or an event, in terms of if you want to have your iPad with you, it can be really helpful because it's a bit more, you can see a little bit more on the page. But if you don't have an iPad, you can use your phone as well. Some live illustrators start with, when they're very first starting out, they might start with a tracing app. So when they take the picture, they will trace it in the tracing app, or they may just trace the shape. So that's an option when you're first starting out, and having an iPad or something of that nature does help with that. Just until you start to feel a little more confident with freehand drawing, which can take time. I would recommend getting, if you can, a second-hand iPad. It doesn't have to be brand new. There are quite a few places that do second-hand iPads, because if you're just mainly using it for events, I don't feel like it needs to be brand new or a pro or anything like that. So that's just a little tip for equipment. So there we go. Got the dresses. I can see that I've done the lady on the right a little bit incorrectly in terms of the angle. I feel like her head should have been coming in a little bit further. but that's okay. Like I said, we're trying to go for the most accuracy possible and at the same time as speed. And sometimes you will make mistakes, and that's okay, as long as it's kind of close enough. That I don't feel like that's a huge deviation from the original, the reference picture. So I feel like that's okay. But you can definitely, if you make a bigger mistake or something's really off, you can start again, especially if you're drawing with pen. If you're drawing with pencil, even better, you can erase and fix that. So then we've got the top of her ear, and we've got the rest of her hair. And now we've got the rest of her earring. Okay. Oh, she's got an ear as well. That's pretty much done. That is fair. Like I feel like that's fair enough for in live. If you are at home finishing finishing more, you can add more detail if you like as well. So that's up to you. But here we go. There's that one. So when you have drawn your version, I would love to see it. If you want to get in contact and show me what you've drawn, and if you need any pointers, I'm absolutely happy to do that. So that's the second one. So we're about halfway through. So I think we may have time to draw one more. Let's have a look and see what we've got. Okay. Got time to draw one more and before we paint. So I'm gonna get a fresh paper again. This has the pre-printed words on it as well. So this is something that I pre-printed ahead of the day. And many clients will like that and will like that as an option. So if you can offer that, it really helps. I can list the details of the printer that I use in the description. So if you want to look into getting a similar printer, you can. But really, it doesn't matter too much as long as the printer is able to take relatively thick paper. This watercolor paper uses 300 GSM. And you can get thinner watercolor paper, but I would say that having thicker is a little bit better. It holds water a bit better, and also it's just more sturdy. I do put a backing cardboard and a sleeve on top when I'm at weddings. But having thick paper is good, is always good. So yeah, you just want to make sure that your printer is able to take relatively thick paper. So it doesn't need to be crazy expensive. But if you are also using it for other parts of, if you have an art business, you may want to get something a little bit higher end to do your archive of prints and all that sort of thing. So here we go again. So maybe a little pop quiz. What would you start with here? So like I was saying before, most likely the chin. The chin of the shortest person in the painting, in the photo. So here we go. Start with her chin, and it's on an angle, so just keeping that in mind. do her dress just to make sure that we've got everything on the right angle. And so the next part, like I said before, the principle of making sure that the subjects are in the correct positioning is making sure that you're drawing wherever they touch. So we're going to do their shoulders next to make sure they're in the correct positioning before we draw the rest. So we've got her shoulder, and it doesn't go all the way down. We can't see everything, so we're going to start with his suit, the part of his suit that is covering the front of her arm, and then we can see that his shoulder comes up to, so the end of his shoulder is about the middle of her chin, and it's on an angle. So that's how we know what height we are aiming for. So it's on an angle there. So now that we've done the shoulders, we can keep going with the rest of the drawing because we've made sure that they're in the correct positions in relation to each other. So we're drawing her dress. We'll draw the rest of her hair just to make sure that we've got everything on the right angle. Draw the rest of her shoulder. So you really have to make sure to draw in little increments and little sections rather than, when you're drawing the arm, just drawing the whole arm, because sometimes you miss out on the little details if you do that. So just drawing in little increments is really helpful. She's got a phone in her hand, but I think I'll probably leave that out. And that's just like one of those discretionary things where you as you're drawing, you think, oh, I might not include that because I don't really feel like it adds to the photo. If she has her phone in her hand, the painting, sorry. I'm going to draw her partner's hand, and then we've got the rest of her hip there, and then we will finish drawing him as well. So we're going to draw his collar, and the other side of his collar. This is always tricky, making sure that the collar isn't too big in relation to the neck. So, and that kind of takes practice. I don't really have so much of a trick for that. It's sort of practice and getting a feel for what works and what doesn't. I have made the mistake that I was talking about before, where now his head is running into the writing. I didn't have her low enough. That's okay. It's just mostly going to be his hair, so. not ideal, but it's better than having his head be like super tiny. Okay. And a regular rectangle and the shape of his thumb and fingers, and the rest of his suit and pant leg. Then her hip is slightly in front, so we'll finish that bit. And then she's sort of standing on an angle, and then we can finish his leg there. I don't mind it too much when the drawing runs into the words. It's just, I don't really mind it too much because I feel like it looks really gives it character, I feel. And I feel like as long as you can sort of still read what it says, I think that's okay. When it comes to tattoos as well, if you have time, you can add a little bit of detail of it. You don't have to add the whole thing, but you can sort of do a little bit, enough that it's sort of obvious what's going on there. So I just added a little bit of it there. Okay, so we are now ready to start painting what we've already drawn. So let's do that in the last half an hour of our session. So that's the third one there. So let's go back to the first one. And we are going to, before we actually put it down on the table, I'm just going to show you a little bit about color mixing. So I'm going to show you my palette. So when it comes to painting, you want to make sure that you have either a towel of some sort, or paper towels work great because they're definitely better than tissue. You really don't want to use tissue because this doesn't flake off or anything like that. And because the flakes, if you do have flakes, it can go into the paint and go into your artwork. This is my palette, and just fair warning, it is very just unaesthetic, should I say. This is my very first palette that I ever had. My husband bought it for me for Mother's Day a few years ago, so it is very much not in its prime. So we've got our palette, we've got paper towel, and then you want to have a little jar of water. This is a jar from when my babies were really small, when they were having their baby food. So I kept a lot of those. So they're very useful. Any sort of jar, really, whatever you've got lying around, doesn't need to be special at all. And then I usually have tubes as well of the paints that I use the most. So white is the one that I use the most because I do a lot of pastel. And you may also have pencils. You may also have pens. Paint pens. I use Posca paint pens, especially white, if you want to do polka dots and that sort of thing, and adding highlights. So we are going to start with mixing skid color. So I will just give you a quick introduction to, just gonna get my paintbrush ready. My daughter used it last and it's not in a very good way. I might just get a new paintbrush. So you can use any kind of paintbrush that you feel comfortable with. I use lots of different paintbrushes. This one is a Filbert, which is, it's got a slight squareness to it. I use this because I'm able to cover a lot of surface area with that shape. But it's really whatever you feel comfortable with, and maybe what you've used in the past and things like that. Just putting a lot of water on the paintbrush to start with, and then we are going to use part of the palette to mix skin color. So skin color is made up of a bit of yellow. For darker skin tones, you would start with a slightly darker yellow like ochre. But we are going to start with the lighter skin tones. So let's have a look at our reference photo again. Let's just make sure we've got the right one. Sorry everybody, just one moment. Just trying to find the picture that I literally just had. I think I put it in my drive. There we go. Alright, so I'll just increase the brightness a little bit so I can show you. So just have a good look at our reference picture. And because, like I said, it's live painting, it doesn't have to be perfect, but we can see that they generally have lighter skin tones. So we're going to use the lighter yellow. Usually I use a lemon yellow, or a cadmium yellow actually is probably the best to start with. So put a little bit of cadmium yellow on my palette. As you can see, I'm running out. So I have to get more of that soon. I have another palette in my wedding kit that I need to go and locate. But we've got a decent amount of cadmium yellow. Then we're going to add alizarin crimson. I'm saying alizarin crimson because that's what I've got in my this is a Winsor Newton palette, but you may have a slightly different type of crimson, which is fine, but definitely kind of keeping in that crimson range is what you want. So we start mixing in slowly. You definitely want to start with yellow and then slowly mix in the alizarin crimson so it doesn't get too pink. Too quickly. Just adding little bits at a time. And then you may want to test it on a piece of paper to make sure that you're on the right track. And with this, what makes it accurate is adding water. You don't want it to be saturated. And then you can see that we're getting closer to the right color there. Might need a tiny bit more yellow. So you may have to adjust it a few times to get what you're looking for. but I'm happy with that. So then we're going to add it to our painting. I'm just going to keep it up so you can see it very well. And then, like I said, we've used waterproof pen, so it shouldn't smudge. I think we need a little bit more pink. A bit more pink. Tiny bit more yellow. You may have to adjust it a few times until you get exactly what you're looking for. But here we go. And you may, because it's watercolor, you may need to add a few layers. And in doing that, you want to make sure that the previous layer is completely dry before you add the new layer. Otherwise, you'll disturb the layer underneath. So we're adding that first layer. And then you just use the paper towel to blot. There we go. Lovely. So that's the first layer. We're going to come back to it. We're going to let that dry. We're going to come back to it. And this is the best use of time, is going to another one that we've drawn and adding the first layer there as well. I do recall that this lady had a slightly darker skin tone, so we're going to start with the first layer as the lighter skin tone, and then we'll add another different color into it to make it darker than the second layer darker. So I'll show you how to do that as well. So there we go. And just make sure you get all of the bits, because sometimes you might miss a hand or something like that. So just keep that in mind when you're painting, just to make sure you get everything. There we go. Do the same with this last one. Just be careful of the writing, because that will smudge if you use too much water. Once again, I think this couple had a darker skin tone, so we'll come back and add a different color to the second layer. But we'll start with this. Just be very careful of the words. Careful not to smudge it. Okay. There we go. So now let's go back to our first picture. We're going to add, we've run out of the paint, so we're going to add more color again. So starting off with the cadmium yellow, adding the alizarin crimson, testing it out on the paper. It's tiny little bit too yellow. I'm going to add a tiny bit more crimson. And then we're going to add a second layer. And it's okay if the this layer runs a little bit into the hairline, because we will add the hair on top and it'll make it look seamless that way. There we go. So that's good. It's got a bit more body to the color. And definitely when you're doing it live, that's probably about as many layers as you're going to be able to add. And you're probably not going to have time to do a lot of shading, unless it's maybe a very, very small a group of people. Then you may be able to add some highlights and shadows. But usually there's not a lot of time for that. So go back to the second one. Add the second layer. So add the second layer to the lady on the left. And then we're going to work on changing the skin tone for the second lady. So the way that we do that, come back to color mixing. Firstly, we just need to add a little bit more again of the yellow and the alizarin crimson. Alizarin crimson. And then got the testing paper ready. So now we want to add, and this takes a lot of experimentation to get it exactly right, but oh, I did actually say earlier that we should use a deeper yellow for deeper skin tones. So we've got ochre instead of cadmium yellow, and most palettes will have ochre. So we're adding ochre and cadmium yellow again, and then depending on the skin tone, you might add something like Indian red or burnt sienna. In this case, we are going to use raw umber. I think it's pronounced umber. I'm not sure if it's umber, but I say umber. And I'll show you what I mean. So if we have a look at the reference picture, we can see that there's that slight ochre tone to her skin color. So there's a bit of ochre, a bit of pinkness to it, but definitely quite, I would say, bronze, like slightly bronze and ochre, and I can see ochre, I can see raw umber definitely. So this takes practice, sort of figuring out what a skin tone will include, and everybody's so different. And like I said, it's live painting, so it doesn't need to be 100% accurate. Just sort of whatever you can do on the fly, but this knowing, getting a feel for what it will be, definitely takes practice. So we're going to darken a little bit with a little bit more umber. And also just a little bit more pink to it. I would say probably Indian red at this stage, because it's not super, super pinky. And then maybe a tiny bit of, so how we tint this is we'll probably add like a little bit of indigo or ultramarine blue to make it a little bit darker or deeper. You can even add like a little bit of Van Dyke brown. This is ultramarine, which is often used to tint colours. So we've added just a tiny little bit of ultramarine, and that's made it darker. So I think I'm just about happy with that. It's a little bit, I think it's a little bit warmer than what I've got. So I might add a tiny little bit more raw umber, because raw umber is a warm colour, I feel. I mean, I may be wrong there. I'm self-taught, so a lot of the things that I say might not be correct in the art world. Needing a little bit more pink and a little bit more Indian red. It's a lot of adjusting until we feel like we've got it right. A little bit more ochre. Get that bronziness. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. So we're going to go get our picture. So we add a layer of that color that we've just made, and we may need to add another layer as well, just to make sure that it's got enough body. I'll just show you a comparison so you kind of see what I mean. It's not exact, and especially because we haven't added the highlights or the lowlights, and we've only added a couple of layers. It's not exact, but we're sort of getting closer to what the subject looks like. And also just keep in mind that, like I said, it's live illustration, so you're not going to get it 100% accurate. This is something that, especially with skin tone, it's really something that is a lot better suited to the detail is a lot better suited to multiple sessions in a studio setting to get it 100% accurate. Okay, we're going to do her partner as well, and he is the same. He just has a slightly darker skin tone, so we're just going to add a touch of ultramarine. Just a touch, you really don't want too much. Okay, I'm happy enough with that. Now we're going to do her dress, which is a dark purple. Because my palette is very crazy at the moment, I'm just going to go to wherever I've got a darker color and sort of mix it there. So this kind of purple is like almost like a burgundy color, slightly, but not really. It's like a deep purple with slightly burgundy quality to it. So I'm going to start with I'm going to do ultramarine up here. Actually, maybe I might actually go with the green part of my palette. So doing ultramarine, and then we've got, we're going to use one of my deeper reds. So I think I might do Indian red. So because it's a deep purple. We're using deep blues and deep reds. You may even have this color already in your palette, which that's great. Gives us a really good shortcut. I think it has the slightest little bit of pink, like a deep pink, slightest. So we don't want to overdo it with that. Blue. I think that's good. All right, so let's go back, and then we'll add that to her dress. Oops, oh dear. You make a mistake. And the good thing about the filbert as well is, depending on how you angle it, you can get it into really small spaces as well. And then you can flatten it to do larger spaces. Okay. Add some more to give it more body. If you have time, you can go back and do a second layer as well to make it even darker. But when we compare it with the reference image, you can see we're getting it close to the color. We definitely, to make it closer to this color, we're definitely going to need a second layer, and I would probably be adding a little bit more pink as well to adjust it to be closer to that color. And then the gentleman is wearing a dark gray suit, so we'll do that while we're here. So because my palette has already got something on it, I just go to the part of my palette that already has a color close to the color that I'm wanting to mix, which is this part. Okay. Go. And now we're going to do hair. So So the lady's got deep black hair. It's black, but it has like a slight reddish quality to it, just the slightest. So just add a little bit of Indian red. There we go. So that one's done. I'm happy with that. That's decent for, you know, something that you might do live. So we'll leave that aside to dry. And then the last little 10 minutes we have left, we will come back to the first one that we were working on and have a look at the colors that we need for that. So let's have a look at our reference image again. So we've got like a deep bluey black for the suit. This is a little bit more complicated because we've got flowers, and so I would start with the background, a light wash of the background, and then once it's dry, go over and do the details of the flowers. So I think let's start with the this one. I might do that to finish because that's a bit more complicated, and I can show you how I would do it. And then feel free to ask any questions. And then we will do the second session. We'll be going to a little bit more detail. We'll be doing more complicated compositions. So, for example, like a family portrait with children in it, a larger group of people, and we'll also just be going back over the fundamentals of what we've learnt today to get more practice. And also, I will definitely follow your lead. If you have questions, specific questions that I could help you with, we can go back over and do more work on that. So let's do this to finish. So it's a very light blue with a slight tinge of this almost the slightest bit of purple to it. So I'm going to mix the color here because I've already got white there. Make sure my brush is clean. I've got white, and then I might add a little bit more white. It's quite a light blue. And then we're going to add purple. Tiniest little bit of purple. Well, not even really purple. I think just even the tiniest bit of alizarin crimson will be okay. Okay, here we go. It's very, very light, so we may need to do a couple of layers. Adding a little bit more ultramarine there. And like I said, we will probably need to go over it with another layer to really make it obvious what color that is. While that's drying, we will do the deep blue of the suit. So we'll add the ultramarine to black or like a deep purple so we get that deep blue color. Once again, we may need a second layer. And then for the wedding dress, because it's white, it will mainly be shadows. So we'll just do shadows in the creases using a little bit of grey with maybe a tiny little bit of lemon yellow mixed in. Alright, now that's still a little bit wet, so we'll do father's hair, which has like a brown, a slightly light brown quality to it. And the mum's hair is blonde. And blonde is white with a bit of yellow ochre and a little bit of brown, tiny bit of black sometimes, depending on the shade of blonde. We can go into more detail with that in our next session. Add a little bit more ochre. Umber. blonde. And then daughter has blonde hair as well. So we'll do that now. Okay, so that's what we've got so far, and I'll just double check that that's dry. It's mostly dry. So we're going to go in and draw little flowers, and we can do that with a slightly thinner paintbrush. And we've got some deep pink flowers. So we're going to use alizarin crimson and a bit of purple to make it quite a deep pink. I might share my screen with you so you can see exactly what I mean by deep pink. So you can see there, it's quite deep pink. So we'll zoom in. You can see it's deep pink. So we're going to I might just do one flower because I can see we're just about time. I'm sort of just doing the shape, more or less. So we're not doing it perfectly. And then go through the rest of it doing the general shapes of the flowers. And that's usually how I do those more detailed pieces. Well, I might end it there. I just wanted to say thank you so much for being a part of this workshop. Like I said, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to message me or email me. You can reach out to me on Instagram or coffee or anything like that, and I will have another workshop ready for you very soon. And I will list everything in the description in terms of materials and the resources that I use.